Cloud Code is giving you a lot for $200. And I think it's no secret to anyone that in the back end, they're spending much more money to provide you that service. I certainly think that we're walking towards a future where people are going to build more and more like their software solutions.
The Next Gen Sales Leaders Podcast. Coffees for Closers.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Next Gen Sales Leader Podcast. My name is Benjamin Reed. I'm here with Rafael. He is the founder of Sentrion. It is a signal SaaS platform that allows you to get the right information about where companies are. And I'm going to go hand it over to him because he's going to give a much better explanation of what he does. But it's all about the data and it's all about what people are doing at these various companies. So why don't you give us a 3,000-foot view? What is Sentrion and why should people care?
Yeah, thank you so much for the intro and thank you so much for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here. I would say that Sentrion started from a need that I had while I was running my own agency. And it came from a place of building these humongous lists of companies. And I found myself in a position where I always had a reverse engineer, a reason to reach out to those companies, right? And people would do a lot of what's your last LinkedIn post? Or they would try to layer in signals and then lead with that as the way to break into the account. But I thought why wouldn't we start the other way around? Why wouldn't we start with the reason and then write the message from that on, right? So, and that's where I started to explore okay, what are some different ways that we can analyze what's happening inside of a company and then use that to build the list in the first place. And that's how we created Sentrion. And I noticed that the data set that was the least explored for that was job postings. Job postings were very hard to work with. There's a lot of complexity when it comes that when you start getting that data from different sources, when you start unifying it into the same structured format, connecting that to a company profile, and even more so, actually getting the signal that you're looking for out of the job post descriptions. So we ended up focusing there. And so now we have this product that you can just say hey, give me companies who are investing in their first AI product, or give me companies who are shifting from a product-led growth motion to a sales-led growth motion, or give me companies who are opening a new office in Europe, but they're headquartered in the US. So those are just a few examples of what you can do with Sentrion.
This is a break in the podcast to bring you our sponsor, RevyOps.com. That is REVYOPS.com, the #1 GTM data management platform for your GTM and revenue operations data on planet Earth. If you are using the modern stack of Clay and Instantly and Email Bison and RB2B and Trigify and all these various tools scattered across the wind, we unify all that data all into one place so you don't have any duplicates, a unified view of every single contact so you can see all the data and all the activities across all the platforms all in one place. It will allow you and your team to move faster, to get better attribution across the entire funnel, and to make a heck of a lot more money. Go to RevyOps.com, check out how you can get started today with me on a call where we'll learn about your data management problems and how we can get you guys to the next level of growth. See you guys at RevyOps.com. Go there now. It will be in the show notes as well down below. Let's get back to the podcast. So what makes this different than, say, other tools on the market? Because obviously there's many people that are saying signals are important. There's 5,000 different signal platforms. So can you guys walk me through what is the core idea behind how you guys layer the data or pull the data that is novel?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the things that people are doing in the market is they see one top of funnel signal and then they're okay, this company is hiring for a head of sales, so that means X, Y, and Z. Or this company just got funded, so that means X, Y, and Z. And while sometimes some of those assumptions might be correct, they're still assumptions at the end of the day, right? And that's why a lot of people in the industry are talking about signal stacking. And signal stacking can be useful, but at the end of the day, the most useful thing is where can I find evidence and proof that this is actually happening at this company, and because this is happening, I can use this not only as the context to write my message, but as a proven assumption that they have this problem or this need, right? So what we do that none of the other signal companies do is we allow you to type with natural language something like, I want companies who are launching their first AI product. And then what our system does is it identifies what keywords in job postings and soon other data sources would match that intent. and then we pull in that data and we verify it against AI criteria to extract those insights. And then we also give you the sentences and the quotes and the proof for where we found that actual intent that you're looking for, right? Because it's not only about hiring the CTO, it's like you're hiring the CTO because you have this other problem, you know? So it's not so much about the job title, it's more about what we can identify within those signals.
Very interesting. So there's things that happen in the world, and you're looking for other things that would make those signals more relevant. Is that right? Is that the idea?
So we do that in two ways, like vertically and pretty soon like horizontally. And what we do there is like we're not just looking for job titles. It's like we have an AI that we've trained over like a lot of the different job postings, and we basically then find what are the best keyword combinations that could lead to the original intent of the user. We surface those job postings, and then we have other layers to verify that the job postings actually match the intent for the list that the user is trying to build. I'll give you a concrete example. You want companies who are investing, like who are implementing AI in their products for the first time. So think like legacy SaaS, and they're just bringing an AI component to the product, right? Because they're hiring an AI engineer or because they're hiring a machine learning engineer, it doesn't mean that they are bringing AI to their product. They could be hiring that person as a part of some other program. They could be hiring that person to improve their internal workflows. So what I'm saying is that when you're trying to look for intent only based on keywords, you're going to get a lot of noise, because the same keyword on different jobs and on different companies and on different signals is going to mean different things. And this is it sort of like goes back to the same problem of like, oh, there's a signal, I'm going to make an assumption that the company needs or is going through this thing. But a lot of times that's wrong. So what we do is we go and we verify that information, and we only give you the companies that match that actual intent. So everything is scored to the actual intent of what you're looking for. And now what we're adding as well is we're bringing in other sources to cross-reference that information and be able to say that, okay, companies mentioning this on the job posting, they're mentioning this on the SEC filing, their executives are talking about this on social media, and they visited these websites and they stayed X amount of time over there, right? So when you have all these three things together, actually not three more, but when you have these signals stacked, you can like not only paint a more complete picture, but you can also verify that the intent actually matches what you're assuming, you know, so you can show up better prepared and you can actually know what's happening instead of making assumptions.
Very interesting. So is this a data set that you already have, or are you using AI in the background upon request to go out and crawl the web to look for this kind of asynchronously?
Yeah, so we actually built the data set. So what we did is we went to like some of the biggest job data providers, some other sources. We are scraping them ourselves. So we have like a combination of like job boards and career pages that right now is the biggest job posting data set in the market. So we have like 230 job boards. We have millions of career pages that we scrape every day. So all the data gets fed live into our product. We just actually like recently launched the like all of this data via APIs, because we were focusing a lot on more of like a recruiter market, and so for that market like APIs wasn't so relevant, and now everyone in the go-to-market space is shifting to Cloud Code, and even for the users in Clay. So we've just been spending a lot more time on making it available on our APIs. So yes, we do all the data sets.
Very interesting. Okay. And then, I mean, I can definitely see how people would want that in Claude. It is so interesting how everyone's like, screw the interface. We don't need the interface. Give us the CLI, the command line interface. Yeah. So everyone's like racing to get their API ready for it. I know. I mean, honestly, though, like I get that it's hot in the GTM space. I just still think that there is the large majority of the market in the long run, I still think will not be in there. And I think that also Claude, frankly, is on a hype curve right now. And by the way, tomorrow at 12 p.m., I'm filming this on the 23rd of March. So if you're watching this in 3 years from now, this is past. But we are launching the 6-week Claude challenge, Claude Code Challenge. And I have 400 people registered for this webinar that I'm hosting. So I want to
That's
say that
awesome.
I'm not completely anti like Claude. I'm actually
Yeah,
hosting the biggest challenge in the industry, I think, right now.
that's awesome.
But I still think it's a hype curve. So they say if you can't beat them, join them. So I joined them. And I got some good experts on the subject, but I still think that it is overhyped in the sense that people just don't seem to get that AI is probabilistic. You still need a deterministic layer. If the deterministic layer doesn't exist, you need to build it. And guess who's building it? The AI. And guess what the AI screws up a lot? Is the deterministic layer. So
Yeah,
you end up with this kind of weird situation where it goes out and builds stuff, but it doesn't consider all edge cases and problems. And when you're dealing with heavy amounts of data analysis and data cleaning and data enrichment, those edge cases are real, and they're very real
yeah,
across different data sets and across different platforms. So, if anybody's listening and they're like, well, what the heck is probabilistic or deterministic? Probabilistic means that every time you get a response from AI, it's using essentially statistics to determine whether or not the answer is right, which means there's margins of error, and sometimes it could just hallucinate. Deterministic means that every time you put something in, you get the same output. And so if I put in two things, I get, the same two things out every single time. And both need to work in concert with each other. But I think that people are slowly realizing that, because I've seen the hype curve right after Claudebot just ramp up through February. And in the last 3 weeks, it's been so funny to watch. Everyone's like, yeah, it's actually not working the way we thought it would, and like, is anyone else having
yeah,
trouble with the context window? And now
yeah.
like all the chatter is basically kind of going the other way. So it's funny to watch how people just are like, AI has taken over outbound. I just replaced this whole marketing team, and I'm just like, that's just not true, you know.
Yeah, I think
So
people go crazy on the LinkedIn like lead magnet viral posts, you know. I think look, we do a lot of things and we're like experimenting with a lot of things, and certainly one of them that we've did recently, as with anyone out there, was to, like sort of use it to build campaigns, use it for list building. And that's where the problem that you just spoke about becomes very real, which is you might find the AI telling you something that is not what's actually happening under the hood. And when you're working with like data sets, and because list building is a little bit of a deterministic job,
it's
right? You
purely
might,
deterministic.
yeah, you introduce the probability by running AI columns and by using AI to score it, by using AI to filter, but that's one vertical inside of a horizontal deterministic process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I think things get a little bit confusing. I think as the models get better, that's going to be easier. I certainly think that we're walking towards a future where people are going to build more and more like their software solutions. And we were just talking, before like we started recording this, where I think the workflow mode is going to be less and less valuable. But it also, of course, depends on what kind of workflow we're talking about, because there's just some kinds of data and some technical problems that you can just vibe code a solution for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just takes too long. It just doesn't make sense. It's not reliable. So.
Yeah, I think it all depends upon the requirement for stability and the complexity of the use case. Because I think you're right. Like ReviOps is, if you go to reviops.com and you go to the website, it's built on Lovable. I mean, I have like 100, some ridiculous amount of SEO pages that I built in like a matter of 2 hours. Completely vibe coded, the whole thing. I have another software that I built on Lovable, which is we have something called the agency value added reseller model, which allows GTM agencies to put in like their costs and a bunch of other stuff to spit out a model. And it has a full like back end. You have to log in. I tied it into Stripe, all through Lovable. Did not use any Claude, so it was all through the chat with Lovable. And I have a whole landing page and user authentication. So I'm not anti AI. I'm using it right now, but that's a relatively straightforward use case.
Yeah.
There's not like gazillions of users. There's a pretty straightforward model. The math is not overly complex. There's no real input of data outside of the user input into the fields. So I think for like lightweight widgets, lightweight dashboards, lightweight websites, I think that entire industry I think is dead. Anybody who has a landing page builder, I feel very bad for, because I just don't see that being alive any longer. But I think that where it really is still needed, you need professionalized software, is when you get into heavy data related requirements. That's the reason I'm still investing heavily in ReviOps, my software, which is, you have to unify the data, merge the data, manage the data. There are just thousands of edge cases we personally had to solve, and there's just no way you're vibe coding through that, So
same thing on our side and on our product. It's just everyone's keep asking us like, oh, why did you guys invest so much into the hiring signals? Like, why didn't you get more signals into the platform? And it's because we've decided, like, there's already a lot of platforms that give you all the signals, but there's not one platform that truly allows you to get the most out of job postings. And for me, the real value inside of job postings is the subtle things that we can capture in the job descriptions, So you can even prompt like Sentrion, and you can say like, give me companies who are open to adopting new tools in the sales department. And we're going to find sales jobs that say that the person who's being hired can make a decision on which tech stack to choose whenever they join the company, meaning that they're open to like purchasing new tools, right? But that is incredibly hard to solve because you have 230 job boards. Every job board has a different data format. And then even if you manage to crack that, you have to match the company names with the right company profiles. And then there's 10 companies with the same name all over the world, right? So I think that's the kind of like use cases of like, that is going to be hard to like replace with AI. On the other side, because we've done all this work, we can give you a beautiful API that you can send as the company size and the company industry. And we can give you companies who are interested in certain things, or we can even just give you the raw job post data set, right? But that's why I think that it's sort of like, if you're building anything that can be that infrastructure for agents, you're probably in a good path. Or on the other side, if you're building like highly opinionated or not opinionated, but like very vertical use cases, like for example, you're selling to recruiters, or you're selling to small business owners, or you're selling to like a very specific industry on a very specific workflow. Because I think, like if you try to go a little bit more broader and you're just like building a website like a landing page builder, people are just going to go on Claude and on Lovable and Replit, and they're going to do it faster, And I think even, for example, like I've been throughout my whole career, like I started my first company at 16, like 8 years ago. And I started using Elementor, the website builder back then. And I've used it all like throughout those 8 years up until now. What I did the other day is I just downloaded the full WordPress folder. I threw it to Cloud Code, and I'm like, put this in Next.js, and I had to fight it a little bit, but like 5 hours, we built our website, and then I just wanted to add a new page, and it just like it one-shotted it, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that brings me actually to a point that I think you might find relevant to discuss, which is a lot of these legacy platforms that have been having these workflow modes. I think the biggest thing that they have right now is the friction of migration. Mm-hmm. And that might be the thing holding them together for the medium, is like the inability.
Yeah. I think the SMB market's easier to get away from. But I think that there's two modes. One is at the enterprise mid-market level. I mean, some of those systems are so deeply tied into the world, and training people, I know because one of my offers on my agency side was full CRM deployment and transitions. So I would help people get off of HubSpot, go to Close, or get off of Zoho and go to HubSpot or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I know that it's not just can I go grab the data and set it up somewhere. I can do that in a few hours. If it's a very difficult CRM migration, it might take a week. But that's not really the problem. The problem is actually getting their entire organizational force to say, okay, we're going to change our behavior and work this new system. Sure. You have to retrain processes. You have to retrain people. People fight and kick and go, why are we doing this? Yeah. So And it's not that that can't be overcome. It's just that there's a whole political human element to behavior change that keeps people entrenched. But on the SMB front, I think it's less about that, and I think it's more about just people are relatively lazy. And I think that although you and I and anybody who listens to this podcast is probably deeply involved in the GTM universe, the go-to-market, lead generation, sales, and marketing universe, and so we're generally on the cutting edge of willing to do some crazy stuff and try stuff. My experience is when I talk to most business owners, this is just an alien language we're talking right now. And so we're like, oh, you could just one shot this. And they're just like, I don't give a shit. They're like, give me leads, let me make calls. It's like, oh, but you could actually analyze this and do a layer stack of signals. And they're just like, I don't care, Yeah. So I do think that people just think AI is going to run the world. And I think that I think there's many use cases that is true. And I think there's many use cases where I think people are fundamentally not understanding human nature. So anyways, maybe I'm wrong. I just don't see it happening for a lot of use cases, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of things when it comes to thinking about this problem. If we go think just purely on the human factor, or if we go think on the technology factor, I think on the technology side of things, you certainly have the small business owners who are just outcome driven, and they just want, like, as you said, just how can I get leads? If that's by learning, if you convince me that I can achieve that by learning this software and by spending time like learning how to use this thing, they will most likely do that. But I mean, as a good salesperson, you want to give them the path of least friction. So a lot of the times, like, the easiest thing is to just sell them a service, which is why I think that even YC is doubling down a lot on this new model of the AI software agency, where they're betting on companies who are using AI and software to deliver an agency service. And I think that does make a lot of sense, because unlike in the past, there's certain things that you can scale now much easier with AI without having to hire a bunch of people. Whereas in a traditional agency world, the only way that you could scale was directly correlated to headcount, And so that's why I think they're making that bet over there. But if then I go back to the software world, for me, I just see a world, I might be wrong too, but I just see a world where two kinds of SaaS, or like maybe three kinds of SaaS, survive. One of them is the 1 to 3 outcome, so like for a specific niche, for a specific industry, it's probably super automated in the background, probably super opinionated, but it just gets the thing done. The other one is probably the data layers. So any company that is like actually building a data set and making it easier for agents to act upon that data. Because, for example, on our side, you can't just tell Cloud Code to go and scrape 230 job boards off the internet and then put that in a single data source. It just doesn't work, So that is the second type of company. And then the third kind of company is the platforms or the infrastructure. So, the scrapers or the databases. And what I think might happen is we might see like more infrastructure companies becoming a little bit more opinionated, because people are going to try to build things by themselves with Cloud Code anyways. So I think that might be a potential, like the previously in a world where these tools were just simply dev tools, now we might see them like developing more like consumer friendly features, like Superbase. Like everyone's using Superbase now to like to build a replacement for Clay, right? But like, how many GTM people knew what Superbase was like 6 months ago? Like a very small percentage. So yeah, those are just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and this is kind of where I'm the black sheep in this space, because I've been hating on Superbase I'm the first hater of Superbase. In fact, I am like well known in the SYC WhatsApp group, if you know, know. Where I'm like the guy who's like, let me tell you why it sucks.
Yeah, you
What
and
people
Jesse,
don't,
you have.
yeah, me and Jesse went at it. Yeah, it was fun. But the thing is again, like being like a pro suppa base is like being pro like tire. You know, it's like I mean, like a wheel, like the rubber on the wheel of a car, because it's like a tool in a toolbox of tools. And so people are like, okay, I'm going to put my data in Supabase, but you still need, well, you need to have your edge functions written, and then you're like, well, okay, well that we can do that. And then you need your triggem indexes and your other type of indexes written. It's like, okay, we'll write that. It's like, well, now you actually have to have a SQL query. You be good at SQL, and so you can query the database. Okay, well, but then when you run out of have too many contacts and columns, like for example, people don't get this because most people don't deal with large data sets, but you don't need that much data to have a very large database. Like if you have to do 500,000 contacts and you do 50 custom fields on those contacts, you end up with something like a 500 million rows in your database. And if you try to query that without some type of search layer, like an Elasticsearch type of function,
Yeah,
it's very difficult to search through. And so, well, now you just added complexity. Well, it's like, well, I kind of want to do some analytics on it. Well, now you need a columnar database of some sort. So the Supabase is fantastic if it's transactional and there's no heavy querying. It's like literally just get me an email, give me back an email. Great for that.
Yep.
As soon as you start to do deeper analytics or queries, you run into the wall. But that's what people don't get, is that when they build on Supabase without some type of computer science understanding or degree, and they want to go deeper, I'm talking about 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and they keep on building and building, they're going to reach a point where they're going to want those things. But they're not going to realize that that's a whole world, and you're not going to Claude code your way into a computer science degree. And I'm maybe I'm wrong. I just don't think Claude Code's going to do DevOps particularly well. I think there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy around, like, how do you use GCP? You know, now maybe GCP comes out and has a fully AI like DevOps environment, and you just go in and you Claude code with GCP. Okay, then I guess the world's come to an end. But there's a lot of edge cases. I mean, I think the edge cases are the problem, and this is where I think agencies have to make a decision. Are they going to be a software company, or are they going to be an agency? Because everything I just described, I mean, I have 9 guys on my dev team, and I know how hard it is. I mean, I see all the bugs, I see all the tickets, I see all the problems, I see all the feature requests. I don't see how you don't end up with a bunch of developers still managing the code base that you have. You know, and so it's like you now are a professional product builder, if that's what you want to do. And maybe that's every company on planet Earth. But I just think that there's a little bit of Dunning-Kruger effect going on, where people have very high hopes and they're not realizing building software is challenging.
Yeah, and I think something that it's sort of like puzzling me personally a little bit is that I've used both Claude Code, and I've also used Cursor with the Anthropic API. And in my personal experience, the results on Cursor were much better. And my thesis for that, in terms of just like one-shotting and getting things right and keeping the context throughout the conversation, my thesis for that is because, you know, Cloud Code is giving you a lot for $200. And I think it's no secret to anyone that in the back end, they're spending much more money to provide you that service, you know? So I think, you know, when you're selling like probably like 5, because I've done the same work on, I know how much it costs to pay Anthropic for that. And I know how much we've used it on Cloud Code. And I could tell you, like, we probably spent in one of the months, like 5K in Cursor. And I did like half of what sometimes I do in Cloud Code in a month. So let's say that their Anthropic is spending like 5 to 10K a month per each $200 power user. I would imagine that Anthropic is doing something to throttle that right now. So probably they're like giving less thinking, less reasoning, like shorter timeouts for those users on the subscription. By the way, this is all I might be totally wrong here, but what that brings me it brings me to a thought that like, okay, it's already so hard to make like these things, like replace these production softwares with Cloud code. And where's it going to be like in 1 or 2 years? Like, are they continuing to subsidize this? Are the models going to get better? Plus the fact that they're subsidizing this, maybe that keeps the trend healthy, and we just keep on going towards this direction where everyone builds their own software, and that's going to happen because, there's a subsidy and there's better models that are coming out. Or will we actually have like sort of an inflection point where they're like, okay, look, we can't keep subsidizing this. Maybe the models got better. So maybe we achieve a point where we have the same level of intelligence as we have today, but we just have like better models that are less subsidized, so like so the final outcome to the user might be sort of like the same or a little bit better, if they ever want to like achieve a sustainable revenue model. Which brings me to the question, like, will we ever actually be able to like vibe code some of these tools that we want to replace? Is that something that's really going to happen?
Yeah, I wrote a big LinkedIn post on this actually a few weeks ago, which is people that aren't in software don't understand that cloud computing costs money. And there's actually like a hard cost. And that cost, especially with heavy data processing, is relatively high. And by relatively, I mean, if you're doing a large amount of data processing, you'll be spending several $1,000s a month in cloud computing. I'm talking about like high volumes of stuff. So like right now at ReviOps, we're spending something like $7,000-8,000 a month on cloud computing. And that's like, I don't even think we're like near where we'll be in a year from now. So now there's some companies that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on cloud computing. But the point is these large language models, everyone talks about the data centers and they think it's about just training the model. It's not just training the model. It's also dealing with the actual user behavior and the searches and the actual just querying of the databases and managing all of it. And that's expensive. And an example is like Figma Make. I've been using Figma Make a lot for prototypes. And they basically gave me a full free run of it for the last 3 to 4 months, and I've been loving it and just building all these prototypes on it. And then just today it was like, you're out of credits, you're done, you now have to pay. And so now if you look into it, if I want to build those same prototypes, well, that's several $100s. My website on Lovable, yeah, it probably cost me $500 all in, like with all the changes and back and forth. I kept on buying an extra $50 in credits.
Yeah.
And that's subsidized. That is they're in the growth period. So there is a time in the future where they're going to have to make money. The prices will raise. The base cost on compute, I think, will actually go up because all the actual places where you buy the compute will be saturated, which means they need to have more servers and more computers and more chips. And we already know there's a constraint on supply there. So if they can't build fast enough, then you end up with a situation where they're not making money, they can't build fast enough, there's too much demand, and all of a sudden your cost on chips goes up, and your cost on all these servers goes up, and then the cost on the compute goes up, and then guess what? The cost on us doing Lovable projects goes up.
Yeah.
And so I really don't see how we get away from that. And that's where I was listening to this podcast, and somebody was describing that he thinks it's going to cause an economic collapse where in 3 years the promise of the holy grail of AGI has not come. They've run out of, they're not building the data centers fast enough. The demand is massive, but the costs are just prohibitive. And everybody who built this 500,000 line code base on Cursor or Claude, who has no clue about what they're doing, all of a sudden gets hit with a $30,000 a month bill to like manage it. They don't have the money, but their entire business is like based upon that stack. It's going to bankrupt a lot of companies. And I know it sounds like doom and gloom, but give me a counterfactual. I mean, maybe everyone's like, well, we're going to, I don't know. I don't see how you get around it. It's a weird thing.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's with this, it's just a technology that brings so much uncertainty to so much things, because if we continue on this like sort of trend, we can see a lot of people we already see that, but even more like people losing jobs and, sort of like some will lose jobs, some will get jobs in different roles. I think something, I mean, I don't want to open up this Pandora box, but something that I've been like thinking a lot about recently is like some reports that I've been reading that, companies are not hiring junior developers or junior hires or lawyers so much anymore. Right. And because
that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, it's a whole nother thing. But for me, it's just also just makes me think like, okay, what is going to be like the intergenerational like transmission of knowledge? But even more important, it's also like, okay, if those kids that are coming out of college, by the way, kids, I don't mean I'm also like probably their age, but like, what are they going to do, right? So are they going to be entrepreneurs? What are going to happen to also the people that were just getting fired off of the classroom? Are they also going to be entrepreneurs? Are they going to build on AI? Will that sort of like society movement of everyone building on AI and being an entrepreneur, maybe that creates a more like economical like it makes more sense, when it comes to supporting all these costs from AI and data centers, or maybe that happens, I think there's just so many factors like this technology and the world we live in and that's something that personally has been a little bit challenging is you might think about something in a logical way. It does make sense of a view of where the world is going, but then it's just someone has a little bit of a different perspective and shows you some other kind of data, and then suddenly that stops making sense. Because as you said, also AI is something that is probabilistic by its nature, not deterministic. It's also quite hard to see where it's going to go in terms of expanding its capabilities, so.
Not only is it probabilistic, people don't even know how the probability works. It's not only like guessing most of the time. Now, guess is right a lot of the time, but and I watch all the stupid podcasts. I'm on top of this, and I'm listening to all the NVIDIA speeches and all the Anthropic speeches and all the gurus who are all the safety people, and I read all of it. Everyone's basically like, yeah, we just don't know what's going on, just no clue. Like it's
nobody knows.
And so.
Oh man.
There's so many ways this goes off the rails. But I mean, look, here we are. What are we going to do? We're going to do the best we can. I just think in terms of software. Okay, let me back up because there's so much we could say, but I only have 3 minutes, so we're going to have to wrap. But I will say one thing is that I still think humans have a human nature. And people are assuming if AI is AGI and you don't have to think and you just say, get me a burger, and the thing just immediately just does it perfectly every time, and there's just no friction, fine. Make me an app. Okay, and then it immediately says, hey, there's all the edge cases. I don't care, just solve it for me. And it goes, okay, and it goes, and you play with it. Yep, this is good enough. If Bubba can do that, I'm done, fine. But I don't see that happening, at least anytime soon. I think you need a human in the loop. And this idea that there's a lot of people on Earth. There's 9 billion people or something crazy, 8 billion people, I don't know. But the idea that the vast majority of those people are going to all of a sudden become entrepreneurs is stupid. I know how hard. I have a very weird personality. I'm an ENTP, high strung, kind of stressed out, can't stop thinking of ideas. I'm a weird person, I know that we live in that community of entrepreneurs. But that's not the norm. And the vast majority of people like to go sip on some Coca-Cola and, smoke a blunt and hang out with their friends on the beach if they can, and on occasion play Halo after work, after grinding. That guy is not going to go start a company. I'm sorry, he's just not. And so if that's the case, then where does he add value in society? And given that there's already, like in the UK, there's some crazy amount of like youth unemployment, people are already disillusioned because of social media, putting aside AI, and then you just take away all hope. I don't see how this doesn't end with revolt. I mean, truly, there's this great like story about this king in like the ancient lands. I don't know who said this, but he decided, I'm going to give unlimited wealth to all the people, and I'm just going to make it rain. And he gives all the wealth to all the people, and all production stopped. Nobody showed up to the butcher's market. Nobody showed up to the library. Because they're like, look, I got the money. I don't need to work anymore. Well, then who's building this shit? And they're like, well, AGI will do it. No, it won't. And not for the vast majority of the shit that you have to do for the next 10 years. You need to have robotics fully in place. You need to have supply chains, fully autonomous boats. You need to have fully autonomous cars, but truly like fully autonomous. There's so many things you need in place before it just works. So we could spend 4 hours going down this rabbit hole. I think that if it works, we're fucked. If it doesn't work, we're fucked. We're fucked.
Yeah.
So, excuse my French.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to learn sorry, you weren't finished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't you let people know, I got to jump. So why don't you let people know where to find you? And they obviously should reach out if they're looking for any signal-based data around job postings, what's going on, and stacking those signals. I think it's a great value prop. Definitely check it out. Show notes in the description. But why don't you give people a quick shout out to your website and where they can find you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, of course. So you can find us at Sentrion.ai. So that's Sentrion. And on my LinkedIn, you can find me at Rafael Guerreiro. I know it's a bit of a last name, but I'm sure you'll find my name in whichever platform you're watching this from. And Ben, thank you so much for the invite. I know we've touched on quite a few things here. It was very, very interesting conversation, very fun. So yeah, thank you so much for the invite.
Cool. And last question I ask everyone is, putting aside AI and craziness or whatever, just from a human perspective, you got one life to live. What's the number one lesson you have for people listening?
In terms of an advice. Yeah, that's a very
whatever you want to leave people with, like a one shot, piece of wisdom.
I would say go out there and spend more time with the organic. Something that I've definitely done throughout my career was I've put work in front of relationships with family and friends and things like that. And I think a lot of that came from associating my success in work to my identity. So if there's one thing I would change going back is that work is cool and we all have these different brains, as you said, and we put a lot of our focus and identity into work. But if that disappears, the friends, the people, the relationships, and the things that give you passion, the things that fill you up with energy, that's all that is left. And in a world where AI takes your job, that's also the same case. So I would say, don't get too caught up into the excitement of AI or the fear of AI. Go spend some time out there, and I think we'll watch the world unfold, and we'll make the best decisions with whatever cards we're dealt with. So
I thought you were going to say, "We'll watch the world end."
We'll watch the fallout, and
we'll all get together, kumbaya, one last time before it's all over. All right. Well, hopefully that's not some really they're going to clip this and be like, this is when they knew. The AI is watching right now. They know it's over. All right. Well, good stuff. Check them out, guys. And I'll see you guys on the next episode of the Next Gen Sales Leader podcast.
Thank you.
Peace out.